Your life has no juice, no excitement or grand adventure, and you're in the middle of your youth, yet pictures like this seem to remind you more of movies than actual memories. You're smart but can barely land a minimum wage job, and chances are you'll never own a house unless you inherit one. And day by day, we are gradually realizing that all the things life promised us just ain't so. And I think I know why. It all started long before you were born. 1971, President Nixon depegs the world reserve currency from the gold standard. The Federal Reserve can now print an infinite amount of dollars. They lose over 90% of their value. Nice. Every major quality of life indicator goes haywire. Money is now a tool to funnel assets to the upper echelons. University quintuples in price, childlessness doubles in one generation, and the middle class evaporates. A dramatically overstimulated economy collapses in on itself. The government fixes it with further stimulation. They bail out the banks and make you pay for it. A hangover on the world stage, cured with an espresso martini. A global pandemic, ports freeze, borders close, global production lines take a sick day no one could afford, government steps in, more stimulation. $4.6 trillion printed in 2 years, and guess who's going to pay for it? Savers are officially wrecked. The dollar is kept on life support by a deal made in the 70s between the US and the OPEC countries, most of which are in the Middle East. The IMF and World Bank have been artificially suppressing their economies for decades to keep Western imports cheap. The productive capacity of half the world is now being extracted by the West through indentured servitude. Grain, oil, clothes, silicon chips, products, all imported, but the OPEC countries are growing tired of their petrodollar agreement. China launches their competitive petro-yuan to counteract dollar hegemony and offers it to some of their buddies, and they are interested. Meanwhile, the US trade deficit's been getting worse. They're not producing anything. They're importing it all for cheap from the victim countries of the IMF and World Bank, but it's okay. All those imports are freeing up time for the West to work on more important issues.
People protesting outside Walt Disney Studios in Burbank tonight over what they terrible scenes here at the
Okay, let's recap. Gen Z is getting squeezed at both ends. We are continually paying more for less. Home ownership is becoming a thing of the past. Wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. Higher education is getting increasingly useless despite putting you in debt that will now take half your life to pay off. Half your paycheck is spent on rent anyway, and the job market is ignoring you. The US is showing all the symptoms of the end of an empire, while the UK is chalked already. Almost the entirety of our generation feels like life is meaningless, and you've been too busy scrolling TikTok to notice how fucked you are. Except you do notice, because modern dating dynamics have got so bad that you can't even remember the last time you had so much as a hug. At this rate, you'll never find a wife, and even if you did, you wouldn't want to sentence her to a life of financial insecurity with you. You realize something has to change if you ever want to support yourself, let alone a family. So you look for help in the only place you know how: social media. You ask your favorite search engine how to get your life on track, and goddamn, so many people, so much advice. Winter Arc, Monk Mode, 75 Hard, Goggins, Hormozy, Gadsy. If he did it, why can't I? Maybe I am a loser. I should follow what they say. It's October, so you start a Winter Arc. You post to your story that you'll be gone from social media for a while. 6 people view it. Mild disappointment ensues. Then you get to work, but on what? It's clear you're not in the best shape, so you start going to the gym. This will help with finding a wife, but big biceps don't mean you can afford kids, and you don't want to grow old and alone. You're a uni student, and chances are you'll drop out before you complete your course, and even if you don't, a part of you knows that your degree will hardly affect your earning potential. Definitely not enough to justify all that fucking debt! It's getting more and more rare for graduates to land jobs that have anything to do with their degrees, but you don't want to think about that. Higher education used to be a place for people to do something with their lives. Now it's a place to not do something with your life for 4 years without feeling guilty about it. Still, you know your philosophy degree won't fund your plans for a family, so you buy a course from your favorite internet liar and start your first side hustle. But you're so tired from work or uni that you can hardly give it more than 2 hours a day. The people you're competing against are giving it 10. The project fails. You hate your job, but you're too afraid to go all in on your dream. Not in today's economy anyway. Not when there's so much competition out there. But hold on, the reason people resonate with this video is because everyone is feeling this way. Everyone is tired, weary, unenthused, hijacked by the algorithm. They all think there's too much competition, and so none of them are competing, which means there's actually less competition than ever. The internet just lets you see it all. Ah, yes, the internet, of course. What Gen Z lacks in economic prosperity, it makes up for in technology. Never before has an entire generation of people had so much power at their fingertips, and never before has an entire generation used it for such shoddy reasons. I mean, sure, working a job you hate just to watch Netflix on the weekends and scroll TikTok in your downtime sounds like hell, but at least you'd know what you're doing, right? Better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven, right? No. There has to be a better way. We are actively paying the cost of the monetary irresponsibility of our parents' generation by way of inflation and a piss-poor job and housing market. We don't even come close to enjoying the prosperity that our parents had in their youth, and all those problems being real and immediate in our lives leaves us with only one choice: how to respond. It would be nice to think we can just blame boomers for our lack of opportunities, but I mean, look at us. We aren't exactly grabbing the bull by the horns, are we? The world has offered us as many distractions as it has challenges, as much anesthetic as it has pain. And while we can point fingers and shout from the rooftops about who's to blame, what if the root of the Gen Z problem is not too much pain, but too much anesthetic? Not too many problems, but too many ways to avoid dealing with them. Psychologists Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson divided pain into two types: region alpha and region beta. Region alpha is mild pain, but region beta is intense. The region beta paradox is that it takes longer to travel 1 mile than 3, because if you have to travel 3, you'll drive, but if you only have to travel 1, you'll walk. And so the 3-mile journey becomes faster than the 1. People will put up with mild back pain for years, but if the pain is intense, they'll visit a doctor and get the issue fixed. And so, paradoxically, the mild pain leads to more total suffering. Your parents didn't have all the modern forms of entertainment, and so they couldn't use them as anesthetic. They would have to go and get the issue fixed instead. Not only this, but without being drip-fed satisfaction by big tech conglomerates, your parents spent their youth making better mistakes. Their mistakes included taking too many risks and socializing too often. Your mistakes include watching too much Netflix and not touching grass. The two most famous dystopian novels, A Brave New World by Huxley and 1984 by Orwell, both predicted two very different types of dystopian future, and I think this quote summarizes that difference perfectly. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there'd be no reason to ban a book, for there'd be no one who wanted to read one, and it seems like Huxley's prediction is becoming more true every day. We are simply inundated with cheap ways to avoid looking at our issues. So yes, we have our fair share of challenges, but when have humans not? I mean, you can point to our parents' generation and say they had it easier, and in some ways you'd be right, but you'd be pointing at the most prosperous generation in history. Take any generation in human history besides our parents, and I promise they had bigger pains than us. The only difference is they had less anesthetic, so they did something about it. There's a scene from a game I played as a child where you play as a cyborg who has pain inhibitors to prevent him from feeling any pain. In the final boss fight, he's about to lose, and he calls his guy in the chair and tells him to turn off his pain inhibitors. Suddenly, every ounce of pain from the wounds he sustained during the fight rushes through his body and sends him into a frenzy of motivation that causes him to go Super Saiyan and beat everyone's ass. And as little 10-year-old Angelo sat there, watching cyborg body parts flying all over my screen, I realized something. No matter how fucked your situation is, if you want to make it better, sooner or later you'll have to stop ignoring it.